I had two routes I was going to go today, and I chickened out on choosing the safe route. So maybe we'll do the other one another time. Anyway, so my name's Steve Cox. I'm on board here as one of your guest speakers. Who was here for the Columbia one the other day? Okay, so I guess it wasn't too bad. Some people are coming back. Great. So this is going to be on Apollo 11. I grew up in this area. It wasn't very much of a guess for me to become an engineer. This is one of my drawings at age 9. I actually won an art contest, $2. I'm published at 9. I haven't published since, but anyway, this is an early version of the space shuttle called a space bus. They hadn't even named it yet, so it's got all the stuff on there except for one thing, that it's got carbon dioxide as the oxidizer. So if I could do that, we could get ourselves out of all the pollution in the world. But I don't think we've quite figured that out. I turned it sideways because it fits on the page better. All right, so I have a few questions, and so we can get you in gear for this, and we can. A lot of things were happening in the 60s. We had done some things that probably shouldn't have been doing, but we were spying on some people, and we got caught doing it, and they captured one of our guys, and we had to try and figure out how to get him back. I think that was a little mutual. Both sides were doing that. So additionally, we got a new guy in for the president, John F. Kennedy. A lot of scrapping going on there, and he was having a hard time getting some legs, and he was doing a few things wrong, a few things right. So there was a lot of stuff going on back then. We were all scared to death because another country had started putting some stuff up, something beeping over our heads. Nobody knew what that meant. They finally got a man up there. We were way behind. There's a line in a song, we're way behind, make some time. Then we had some other bad stuff going on, so I had some wars going on there, and we were actually trying to create some more with Cuba. There was the Bay of Pigs, and does anybody remember any of this stuff? Yeah. Okay, pretty terrible. There was the president wasn't doing that great, so he needed something to kind of inspire the nation, and he came up with a pretty good trick. The trick was to have a space program. And so if you'd like to, who wants to go back in time to the 60s? You don't actually have to go there because, it was the 60s. so if you want, does anybody want to go back to the 60s? All right, so I'm going to go back to the 60s here. And kind of like Superman. So, all right, so I probably need that. Right. So we need to do something better. Let's go back. So we had this guy. He came up with this crazy plan.
Why
so listen to what he says.
The moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? Why does Rice play Texas? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too.
So he gave this speech quite a few times. Obviously, this was one of the more prominent ones, and everybody's probably seen a lot of this before. But one of the things I wanted to bring in a picture to this is totally insane. Our total space experience that we launched one guy, Alan Shepard, up into the air for 15 minutes. He went straight up, straight back down. That's it. Had nothing along the technology lines to go to the moon. If you ask, my wife says don't talk. If you ask me if I thought the moon landing was fake, this is why I would say it's fake. It was not fake, okay? Don't get that. But it was so difficult to do this, and I've looked through the engineering of this, a lot of it, and it was so impossible. We didn't know what we didn't know. We had to invent complete new technologies. So this was a tough thing. But the country locked onto it because of the times. They locked onto it. Let's do it. And then there's also, don't really taunt somebody to do something they can't do unless you want them to actually do it. They may pull through and do it. Just remember that, especially with your kids. Tell them not to do something, they'll do it. So, and this is where I get to, everything had to be built from the ground. This was like 1962. In between 1962 and 65, they built everything. The pads, the vertical assembly building, the launch control center, the rocket, the mobile launch platform, the crawler, all of that stuff was built, and it was built all at the same time, which is very different from project management because you don't know what the requirements are. And my father-in-law, he worked on the VAB. I've got a picture of him somewhere in another presentation, maybe, that he's standing on top of 525 feet on top of the VAB on an I-beam with no tether or anything, no OSHA. So we'll talk about that in another pitch, but all this was brand new. The LIM was terribly complicated and wouldn't get delivered till late. But we were just screaming down the road doing this. Everybody was working 24 hours a day. Titusville came to be, the town I live in just came to be. The whole Space Coast just grew up all around this. There's just young families everywhere. So we got going so fast, we had a problem. So they were doing a test on Apollo 1. The oxygen environment in there was too high. They had a spark and they had a fire, and we lost 3 astronauts. Grissom, Chaffee, and White. That shut the program down for about 20 months. Some of the managers were literally just chewing out their employees, like, we should have never let this happen. So I don't want to go into all the details of that, but Neil Armstrong said that because that happened, everybody became much more focused on success, much more focused on making sure the designs were proper and safe for the engineers. So Neil Armstrong says that actually, despite the tragedy, actually probably made us successful in doing this. But it turned out that the fire quickly used up the little bit of oxygen they have in there, and burning all the plastic and everything, they basically suffocated. They couldn't get in there because it pressurized the capsule and the door opened inward. So it took them about 7 or 8 minutes to get inside there. So they did die of suffocation. So I've listened to the audio, and you don't want to listen to the audio, but so some of this was stuff like for Colombia was very tough to do, but you don't want to do that. So this is another little thing, but this was actually just kind of stuff that goes along with work. So they made a lander to represent, so they could practice landing on the moon, and done this many times, practiced many times, success, but it only has 1 engine on it. And so that engine cut out one time, and this guy punched out at about 200 feet and parachuted out. So let's watch him punch out, see what happens. So if it had been pointing down, he would have not made it. But I'm not sure if he got singed or not going by that fire, but this guy, when he landed, you think you might have to go to change your clothes or something, but he went back to work. They said, are you going to go get checked out the hospital? He said, no, I got some paperwork to do. So we went back. Does anybody know who this might be? Oh, somebody's a smart guy over here. Who said that? All right, somebody fess up. All right, we got over here. I'll catch up with you. So you get to take him home with you. So this was Neil Armstrong, and I found out that NASA had an A in it, so I'm allowed to talk about airplanes as well. So X-15 is one of my favorite vehicles. Very, very fast, very, very high. Some of these people, as I'll talk about later, there's 2 A's in NASA. Didn't anybody pick that up? The other one's there just for administrative purposes. Come on now. Aeronautics and Space Administration. So, in order to do this, you got to do a lot of testing, and I'm just going to quickly run over them right quick. Apollo 7 went up, went around the Earth, no LIM, just practice that. Had a mutiny on board because they had colds and they didn't want to do media, so they had a mutiny on board, but none of those guys got to fly again, but they proved that the capsule could be landed without having your spacesuits on, because that's what they mutinied for. 8, it was kind of a stunt, still no LIM wasn't done, so they went around the moon. They were not the first crewed mission to go around the moon, did you know that? The Russians beat us. Of course, there were 2 turtles that went around, so it wasn't actually humans, but the turtles didn't fare well, by the way, at the end of it. So we've got Gene Cernan and John Young, who are the pilots, and to make sure they didn't land, because for Apollo, 9 went around the Earth with the whole LIM and everything, but didn't go to the moon. So we have Apollo 10 that goes to the moon. It's a full rehearsal. They've got everything they need. they possibly could have landed, but they didn't want them to land. They wanted to do the test, so they didn't put enough fuel in there for them to land, because they knew these guys would have landed. And this one was the Charlie Brown and Snoopy. One of the interesting things about Snoopy is when they made it back up, they disconnected it, blew a hole in the capsule, the lander, and it flew away with power, and they were worried about getting hit again, so they actually, from the ground, powered it and fired it, and it actually is chasing the Earth around in orbit, and they find it about every 10 years, they can see it. So it's still up there. So Snoopy's still up there somewhere. There's Snoopy. So then we get down to the real guys here. So we got Neil Armstrong, Edwin. I'm trying to say the trivia question you had the other day, Buzz Armstrong. So, and then we have Michael Collins. Some reason Neil Armstrong backwards is alien. I don't know what that is. So this is the dream team right here. They picked. I think most of the astronaut corps would have said, other than picking themselves, they probably would have picked Neil, because he was just really focused, and his blood pressure didn't get up. And I think at this point he'd probably had at least 3 or 4 close calls where he probably shouldn't have made it. And one was the lander tester that they had. Probably shouldn't have made that. So this is them getting dressed. Now I know some of this video has showed up in some of the other things, but it's the only footage we have back from the air. So I'm trying to show you a different take on it. So I showed this in Colombia the other day. It's the same room where the Columbia team suited up.
It's 1 minute, 35 seconds.
Oh, pick out see if you can pick out the faces and who it is. Now there's some cheating going on here, so see if you can see who's who.
The Apollo. It's 1 minute, 35 seconds on the Apollo mission, the flight to land of the first men on the moon. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we have go. 1 minute, 25 seconds and counting. Our status board indicates the third stage completely pressurized. 80-second mark has now been passed. We'll go on full internal power at the 50-second mark. It's 1 minute, 35 seconds
again, my bad.
on the Apollo mission, the flight to land of the first men on the moon. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate we have go. 1 minute, 25 seconds and counting. Our status board indicates the third stage completely pressurized. 80-second mark has now been passed. We'll go on full internal power at the 50-second mark.
So they don't have the air screen yet. So I showed that another day. But this is them coming out of the ONC building, later named the Neil Armstrong ONC building. So this is the 60s. So this is why you didn't want to go back. So this is what our highway in front of Titusville looked like.
The Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting.
I got the raw video somehow.
55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been counting.
Someday we'll sync up the audio.
Report, it feels good.
So
The Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been counting.
I'm just going to stop it and sync everything back up.
The Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been counting. Astronauts report it feels good.
Okay, so I need some confession here going on. Has anyone ever worn anything like that in this room? Come on. It might get you something. Okay. So I look at these glasses and stuff like that, and I'm like, holy moly. Now here's the real trick. How many people did this? Well, we still do that. and this is me in my white shirt. It's not, but it could be, and I still do that. So who am I giving this to over here? It wasn't you. So this is the control room and in the Launch Control Center, firing room 1. And I don't know if the audio is ever going to match again, but we'll just try it.
Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power with the launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is in 9. Ignition sequence.
So this is the control room. I don't want to celebrate, but Von Braun was in there. They have something called a green board. So they're all looking out the front and have a green board up at the top. So all the engineers are flipping a switch on their console when they're good. And so the term green board means that we're full green, we're ready to go. Because the launch conductor can look up there to glance and say, okay, who's down? And he on his headset can talk directly to him and say, what's going on? What do we need to do to get you green? So this is the firing room. Wait. Do I match? Do I kind of blend in? That was the point. Nobody noticed that. So I didn't realize this when I was doing the research, and there's one lady in the room. Her name is Joanne Morgan. I worked with her. She stayed around that long, but there was a big struggle as to whether she was going to be in the control room, and management didn't want her in there, and the guys that worked around her said, no, she's the person. She's the engineer we need there. So she was in there. So this is the big boy view, Saturn V. Just run over it real quickly. It's almost 400 feet tall, so it's as big, long as a football field. It has a payload capacity about 120 tons. Now that's the whole upper part of it. It's not just the limb and the people. It's everything. And it weighs about 6.5 million pounds. Has about 7.5 million pounds of thrust. If this was, you took all the fuel out of stage 1 and pulled it in an Olympic-sized swimming pool, it'd just about fill it up, and it dumps it in about just a few minutes. The whole thing. So that's how strong the F1 engines. None of this existed. None of these engines didn't exist. They were all made from scratch. And there's still a very efficient engine today. So we're going to go for a launch here. So Scotty back there in the back, if you can give me a little volume, please get the captain mad at us, please.
Mission sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
I'd love to show you the whole launch. In fact, if you want, we could just stop and watch that a couple of times. That was so loud and so shaking that the astronauts, they were worried they were going to hurt the astronauts, so they had to do some testing to figure out if they were going to damage their ears and everything. I heard this in Titusville. People would put tape on their windows to keep them from breaking, but you literally would move your clothes. It was so loud. They didn't have sound suppression back then. So when you get on orbit, you've got a couple of terms we'll kind of throw out here. This is the crew support module. So the support module's in the back, crew's in the front, and you've got this little probe thing sticking out the front here that's going to turn around and stick itself into the limb. So this is the limb right here, all packed up in the third stage. That little circle there on the top that's where the crew goes through. So that's how they get from the command module to the lunar exploration module, the LM. So that pulls in and it locks in tight. They do a pressure check, and then before they separate, the third stage fires, throws them to the moon, and then they chuck the third stage, which smashes into the moon later, and then they ride their whole way. I took this picture while I was up there. That's my first try. So anyway, this is the Lego version of it, I think. So when did it look complicated launching? Because I think all those arms moving other way. Can you imagine being the guy, engineer, working out? Okay, mine, please move, please. Yeah. So on their way to the moon, so that you basically see here at the bottom where they come over. The moon's not moving. I mean, the moon's moving. So 28-day cycle, basically they're gone a week. So it moves a quarter. So it takes a long time to get there. They're going 25,000 miles an hour, and depending on where it is, it's between 250,000 miles away, which really doesn't add up. It's like only 10 hours travel. But as soon as they put all the velocity into going to the moon, the Earth grabs it and starts slowing it down for about 5/6 of the way to the moon, and then the moon starts grabbing it, speeding it back up. That's why it takes so long. But and they launch on a trajectory that if something goes wrong, it turns around and throws them right back to the moon. That's what they did on Apollo 13. It's called a free return trajectory. So 25,000 miles takes about 3 to 4 days, depending on what it is. Sometimes they go faster, sometimes they go in daytime to the moon, so they can see. Daytime is somewhere around 2 weeks because of the 28-day cycle. Very hot on the moon, can get up to 250 degrees, 250 degrees, and at night it can go just as that cold Celsius. They don't go at night, so they only have to worry about the heat. Now, it's the kind of heat that when you walk out on the beach and you're on the sand, it's hot because there's no air, so the air's not that hot. But it was a huge problem for getting there, so they had to roll. The whole thing rolled, so one side would be frozen and the other side would be hot, and they found out to keep it the right temperature, to have it the right temperature on side. For Apollo 13, they had a huge problem with that. It got very, very cold inside. So let's see, that's the barbecue roll thing. I talked about all that stuff. Now they're on the way to the moon. They got a few days, so they open up. They've got like a 2-bedroom condo up there, so they can go back and forth. This is filming from the opening for the command module into the limb. This is Buzz Aldrin. But you can see the 2 windows in the front there of the lander. So this is them separating to get ready to go down to the moon. So that's a target that they have on the side that they use to line up the vehicle, and they're both doing pictures of each other. So Michael Collins is taking some pictures, and Buzz Aldrin is taking some pictures. Probably Neil Armstrong. Neil didn't want to give away the camera. So those probes sticking out the bottom there are going to tell them when they touch the ground. When they touch the ground, they get lights inside and the engine cuts off and they fall the last 4 feet. You don't need to go to any of my other presentations because I'm telling everything now. So let's go ahead and go for landing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you watch it one time through and listen to it, and then I'm going to go back and replay a couple different sections from a couple different viewpoints.
Okay, program alarm. So 1202. 1202. Give us the reading on the 1202 program alarm. Roger, we got you. We're going at alarm. Roger, copy. Eagle, Houston, you're go for landing, over. Roger, understand. Go for landing. 3,000 feet. Stop alarm. 1201. 1201. Roger, 1201 alarm. Where go? Same time. Where go? 2,000 feet. 2,000 feet. Into the ag. 47 degrees. Roger. 5.5 pounds. With 6.5 down. 5.5 pounds. 9 forward. Good. 620 feet. 100 feet. 3.5 down. 9 forward. 5%. How many fight? 5 feet. Turn looking good, down a half. 6 forward. 60 seconds. Lights on. 6. Down 2.5. Forward. Forward. 40 feet down, 2.5. Picking up some dust. 30 feet, 2.5 down. Straight shadow. 4 forward. 4 forward, drift into the right a little. 6, down a half. 30 seconds forward, just. 6. Contact light. Okay, engine stop. ATA at a descent. Power control both autos, descent engine command override off. Engine arm off. 413 is in. We copy you down, Eagle. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot.
I was going to have you all hold your breath for that, so you could get a little experience. But that's in the interactive version of this, which is not this week. So you can see how complicated, a lot of things going on, and he's trying to land. Now they're calling out, when they're calling out time, that's fuel. They got 60 seconds of fuel. They got 30 seconds of fuel left. So let's go back and talk about a couple of them. So the first one, they lost antenna point. So they weren't talking to mission control. So the Buzz is trying to turn an antenna manual to actually kind of pick up, and the vehicle's moving. So that's pretty tough to do. So meantime, he was talking to Michael Collins in the command smart module, and they were talking. So he was relaying back and forth. So they didn't lose communication, but they had to relay it a little bit. And then he finally got it locked in. And then they go move the vehicle again to change their attitude coming in. So that was a big deal. There was a guy named Steve Bales, and he's not here today, but I'd like to interview him. But 5 times he says this computer error is no problem. 5 times he says it's no problem. What's happening is the ground radar is coming back up and it's bouncing off the craft, and they're getting way too much data in the computer that only has 1K of memory. And so, but the good thing about that is to reset the computer is just, and it's back up. Because it's so small. I mean, it doesn't take time at all. And they do it actually 3 times going down. There's 3 programs they use. 63 gets them slowed down. 64 turns them, and then when they get to the last one, 63, they can actually hover and drive around, which is what Neil Armstrong was doing, driving this other guy, Bob, crazy. So let's
Same type, we're go, flight.
So this is Steve Bales.
Go, same type, we're go. Flight.
So this is him older. So, and this is his cheat sheet procedure. What you're supposed to do on a 1201 and 1202 alarm. You're supposed to bail out. So apparently he decided that he could get away with it. They were running this whole program right on the edge, okay? So later, there was a question came up, and Neil Armstrong said, you made the right call. You made the right call. In fact, the President of the United States made the right call, so they gave the people in the launch control room a group achievement award, and Steve Bales went there to go get it. So I'm not sure, did you really know what I did? So that was going on. So that's one set of problems, one viewpoint from the navigation guys. So the fuel, so now I've heard interviews with Buzz Aldrin. So Buzz Aldrin is talking about what's going on when he's landing. So he's out, he's sitting there and he's calling out the descent rate and how they're moving, plus their altitude. The ground is calling out the fuel mix. And so all those numbers you hear is him telling Neil, and he's thinking, we're 100 feet off the ground, we only have 60 seconds of fuel go down. That's not good. He's like, put this thing on the ground, quit goofing around. But he doesn't want to tell him that because he's busy. And Neil Armstrong's over there. 30 seconds worth of fuel. We ain't got any more time here. Steve Bales, or Bob here, is on the ground, and he's looking at this. I got to tell him to punch. So that they got their hand on the, Buzz Aldrin's got his hand on the abort switch. He did not. From everything I've read, I am pretty sure that both of them decided, no matter what, we're going to be on the moon today, now. If we have to fall the last 100 feet, we're going to fall the last 100 feet. But they had, because of some of the problems, they had overflown their landing site, and now they were coming down at a bunch of boulders. And Bob here is calculating how much fuel they've got, and he's like, they're not going to make it. I know how high they are. He's one of these spooky smart guys. They're not going to make it, they're not going to make it, they're not going to make it. But what he didn't know was Neil Armstrong was flying over a crater. And so instantly when he hit the edge of the crater, he gained 50 feet. The ground literally came up and gave him enough fuel to land, which is amazing. And so he landed with about 18 seconds of fuel left in there. Probably Steve Bales was another guy sitting there saying, actually, Charlie Duke in the control room said, stop talking. Just tell them how much fuel we got. Stop telling them all the other problems that are going on. They can't handle them anyway if they come up, and they're probably not going to abort. And so, because they didn't know that, but I'm pretty sure Neil Armstrong, from his character, he was like, I'm landing today. So, and the capsule was designed to handle that, so it could fall quite a bit. But you can see the little crater there. That's Little West Crater. That'll come back up in a minute. But they had to fly over and land. This is actually footage from Landsat or Surveyor. That's actually if you zoomed in real close for you people with sharp eyes, you could actually see the landing part of the limb still there, and the flag that's fallen over on the side. So this is Pete Collins, one of the loneliest men in the world. He's up top there, and he's like, I want to go walk on the moon, but he's not that guy. He's not that guy. Close, but he's by himself for this whole time they're on the moon. And I found an interview with him.
Talk about the possibility that you might be the guy coming home alone. Did that ever come up?
It was not something I wanted to discuss with them. Hey, Neil, suppose you're stranded forever on the surface of the moon. Would you mind terribly if I just sort of headed home? I mean, it was not the kind of thing one talked about, but it was a presence. It was there.
There was no need to have that conversation, was there?
So all these guys already realized all that. Someone in an interview asked one of them, did they give you some kind of pill or something if you knew you were going to be stranded, that you could take? And he laughed at him. And like, why are you laughing? He says, well, what we're going to do is open the door. We don't need a pill. Just
Stay, no stay, retro.
So when they landed, okay, first thing you got to do is figure out, hey, is the vehicle okay? Can we stay? Did we poke a hole in it? Did a rock fly up, do some damage? So you've got the guys on the ground looking at all their equipment.
Stay, no stay, retro. Stay, vital, stay, stay, control, stay, Telcom, stay, GNC, stay, Econ, stay, Surgeon, stay, Capcom, or stay for T1.
Yeah, so they're trying to figure out, there's a lot going on here. So they're sitting there waiting, okay, we're going to stay here, we're going to immediately just take right back off, because if they have a problem, the idea is to land on the moon and get back. The idea is to land on the moon and get back. That's what Kennedy wanted to do. So, fresh for you today, you probably haven't seen this. It was filmed twice, the Neil Armstrong getting out. Did anybody know that? Did somebody know that in the room that it was filmed twice? Okay, we got somebody back here in the back. So it was filmed twice, so I'm going to show it. So the other person filming it was Buzz Aldrin from inside with his camera.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now. Neil, we can see you coming. Okay, I just checked.
You can see his face in the glass.
For man. 1 giant leap for mankind. Purpose is fine and battery. I can pick it up loosely with my toe. It does adhere in fine layers, like powdered charcoal, to the sole and sides of my boot.
So, when we have a lot of people out there who don't believe it happened. So we have two evidences of it happened. You can actually see Buzz Aldrin's face in the glass. He's all suited up in there too, because there's no second room. It's the whole pressurized goes down. But when he's coming down the ladder, he does a test to jump down and see if he can get back up. And they bug the crud out of him, Michael Collins. What are you going to say? What are you going to say? And his thing is, look, I need to get on the moon first. Let's forget all this other stuff. Let's get down, get landed, and make sure we do that. Then we'll figure out what to say. And he said he literally, basically, he probably thought about it, but he literally based the whole thing, you know, oh, well, I got to take one step off. Now, at this time, they didn't even really know if the moon was made of cheese or not. You know, they really didn't know what was going on. There's a lot more of that footage that's great to watch, but I don't really have that time for it. What's next? So we got the one footprint on the ground. Now, for 15 minutes, Neil Armstrong is running around by himself. Well, why? Why do you think he's running around by himself? Why didn't Buzz come out? Because it took me quite a bit of reading to try and figure that out. So that's a good reason. I'll give you partial credit for that. That's not the one I'm looking for. Back here in the back. This guy wins the prize, so we got to get this back to him somehow. Somebody can get that to him. Oh, you'll pass it on back? Here you go. So here's the trick. They didn't know what was going to happen when you went outside. And literally, they didn't, you know, so they heard the toe thing. They didn't know how dense the soil was. He could fall into a hole, a crack, or anything. The radiation could have got him. So the first thing he does is go out and he scoops up a little bit of rock, puts about, probably I estimated about $5 million worth of rock in his pouch, and he's ready to get back on. Buzz is in there setting all the switches to launch, working with the ground to make sure, hey, we've got to get off, because the goal was to get down and get back. And so that's why it took 15 minutes. The other reason could have been maybe just Neil wanted to walk around by himself, but he does that later. So let's see. So he did do his one footprint, and Neil was like, don't step on my footprint when I come out, so we need a nice picture of that. The first thing they did to him is they said, hey, take a nap, take a break, because they were down for 21 hours and they only went out for about 2.5 hours. So, but the nap time was basically for all the engineers to go through everything. They've been under a lot of stress. Let's get your heart rates down, even though Neil's wasn't up. But somebody suggested they might have eaten some Tang or something. But literally, like the man says in the back, Neil Armstrong was the canary to go out and find out, is this going to be working or not? So Buzz was the second one coming out, and as he came down the ladder, my wife's going to get mad at me, he had to go to the bathroom. So he was like the first man to go to the bathroom on the moon. And he was a little grumpy because he didn't go out first, and he was like, you know, one small pee for man, one giant poop for all mankind. So I'm not sure that happened, but he was credited with the first one to go to the bathroom. They had diapers on, which getting familiar with that. So they were out. He was alone. Buzz came out 16 minutes later. They spent an hour and a half on the moon. Buzz went back in again to make sure everything's like ready to go, and took some pictures. Neil wouldn't give the camera to Buzz, so Buzz had to do all the work. Then he spent about 40 minutes by himself. He walked over to a little crater by himself. Wednesday. So there was some questions later. Did he leave something on the moon for his daughter that he lost during the program of cancer? And he said no. But they asked his wife, and she kind of partially confirmed that, well, that's too personal to talk about. So I have a feeling something happened over there. So this is Buzz Aldrin coming down, because Neil wouldn't give up the camera. And he's like, if you don't give me the camera, you're not going to have any shots of you on the moon. And this is Buzz Aldrin again. He's checking out, pulling the experiments out. I think there's a spare tire, and he wants to make sure if we have to put a spare tire on, we're okay. Now the spacesuit is actually a spacecraft. It's got everything in it. It's got environmental things. It's monitoring their health. And people on the ground, they got 2 engineers on the ground looking at each of them. So there's 4 engineers doing nothing but looking at their spacesuit to make sure everything's fine. They're running water through it to keep them from burning up. They got extra boots on to make sure they don't burn the bottom of their boots, because everything is getting really hot. Some of the other missions, it becomes more of a problem because they spend a couple of days on the moon. And so all that's going on, but he's actually in a complete spacecraft. Very complicated. So this is their flag that they put up together. People talk about it waving on the moon. It was really just unfurling. I think they spent $6.99 on it at Sears and brought it up there, and they just used that for all of them. So that was kind of interesting. Now this is Neil Armstrong's only shot. He's actually in the reflection there. That's his only shot of him on the moon outside. Again, Buzz. So you can see, there he is in the background. he was a man of not much publicity, so he didn't care about that. You can see how big the feet are that they're in, because they didn't know what they were stepping into, literally. Now this is the trace of them on the moon. Blue is Buzz and yellow is Neil. You can see Neil went off by himself, and he made Buzz do all the work. Over the mission's about 800 pounds of rock, so if you divide that into 800 kilograms, 800 pounds of rocks, if you divide that by the cost of the program, it comes out to about very expensive. That's why he had about $5 million of... Okay, good question. Oh, man, you have these questions. You're supposed to get these when I ask the question, not when you ask the question. Little stickers when you ask the questions, but I'm going to let this one go. All right, so this is a baseball field. My wife said put that back in there, so 2 points for my wife. So this shows how far they went. They didn't go very far. So, all right, and they did some other things. They left some stuff. I think when Buzz was getting ready to go back in, Neil said, "Hey, you've got some stuff you need to take out and leave on the moon." So there's the black one up there is all the congressmen that supported it and some people from foreign countries, so they get their name on the moon. The one is for Gus, Chatham, and White, and the other are two for Russians that were in the program. The flag, we left that. It fell over because they put it too close to it, and it's burned up by now from UV. And they left a gold olive branch there. And then there's a plaque on the side that says, "Hey, if you don't know where these guys came from, it's that big blue thing right there." Yeah, and we came in peace, and it's got everybody's signature on it. And incidentally, in the middle of all this, I think Nixon called and said, "Hey, I want to talk to the people on the moon." So they patched him through, and they, "Okay, we're kind of busy here, but okay, we'll talk to the president." So they talked to the president for a few minutes and saluted and all that stuff. So they did leave some experiments. This one here is a laser reflector. And so when you hit it, it bounces back. So we can go on deck later tonight, and I can take my laser pointer out, if I could find it, and then we'll point, it doesn't work. It's a little more complicated than that. But that still works. A lot of the other stuff did not. They left everything they possibly could on the moon. Again, I'm gonna get trouble. They left this, which I had to zoom in very closely. Over all the mission, 96 bags of food. How do 12 guys walk to the moon come up with 96? Must be some heavy fiber in their diet or something, I don't know. I checked that like 10 times too, So they're on the moon, and it's time to go back up.
Tranquility Base, Houston, you're cleared for takeoff. Roger, understand, we're number 1 on the runway.
So apparently it was a busy traffic day on the moon. Okay, now you laugh at that, and I think that is funny myself as well. That's the only traffic day they've ever had on the moon, so by definition it is. And what you don't know is the Russians have a spacecraft above that's going to try and land right after they get off the moon. They were going to land before but something didn't work out. So they land within 300 kilometers of where they landed. That's not an accident, okay? That can't be an accident. But they crashed in. So it was a return sample. There was nobody on it. But they were trying to one-up them. So it was actually a busy day on the moon. So now they don't have a camera of them taking off because I didn't really get up there in time to take that picture too. And so this is the ascent stage coming back up. So they use the bottom as a launch platform. Is now completely relieved because he doesn't have to go back by himself. But so they from here, dust was a real problem, and I'll talk about that more. But they basically anything that had dust on it, they kind of left in the command module and left it there. There is some debate as to whether when they let it go, if Eagle actually hit the ground. There are some studies that say it didn't actually impact, and so it still might be flying around up there. Oh, there was another program going at the time. I don't know why we didn't do this in 1968. We could have just towed a ride with them, so I don't really know what's going on there. So they splashed down, and they had all environmental suits on, making sure that nothing was, didn't bring anything spooky back with them. These are riding balloons in case it ends up upside down. Now there was Michael Collins' wife was having a party, a splashdown party, and her daughter is there with a rabbit. Does anybody see the other rabbit in the room? The ones that I've been chasing most of this time by not actually sticking with the script? Come on, somebody's going to pick it up. Man, you want a picture. These pictures aren't that great, by the way, so don't think you've missed out on a whole lot. Yeah, the rabbit ears. There they are right there. I take my my comedy when I can get it, since I'm not a comedian. So this is Nixon. He decided to come up on the Hornet and watch Hornet come in, so they had to stay in there for like 21 days. They took him back in that, and they got to get out. But there's other people in there with them, doctors and lawyers and such, that kind of thing. Lawyers. It's a song. And they had their ticker tape parade down New York. Everybody threw it up. Big deal. Big deal. And here, if you want to go see it, here's a Columbia in the Smithsonian Institute, and there's my X-15 hanging right up there at the top, and that's actually the one Neil Armstrong flew in. There's 3 of them. Oh, can't go into that talk right now. Washington, D.C., free museum. Alrighty, I have some time for questions, and I give away stickers. That's what I've got for you today. So the fuel system for how much fuel did they need? The landing system and the ascent system are two different fuel systems. So they weren't using their fuel for landing as part of what they would need for ascent. It's completely, and the engine, by the way, is sitting right in there with them. They can almost sit on it. So it's a very simple engine that runs on hypergols, which I talked about the other day, nitrogen tetroxide and monomethyl hydrogen. You just put them together and they burn. So very simple engine, gonna work, but it's bad if it leaks. So they didn't use any of their ascent stage fuel, but they were down to 18 seconds of fuel. That was way past the comfort zone of everybody in the room. So next question. Okay, so are you talking about for the Earth?
Yeah.
So they have 2 stages, and they burn those completely to get to orbit. It's a very round elliptical orbit. The 3rd stage, they can fire that multiple times, so that circularizes it. Then it gets them, and then when they're pointed right at the moon, then they fire that 3rd stage and burn it and throw them at the 25,000 miles an hour towards the Earth. They don't use anything on board the LIM or the ascent stage or to get them to the moon. They do a correction burn on the way to make sure they're pointed in the right direction, because when they launch, the moon's not there. It's going to be there in 3 days. That's how they're working this.
Were the African American women involved in Hidden Figures involved with this before or during this?
So I'm not sure exactly, but they were doing calculations early on and proved that you shouldn't just always rely on a machine. I did these calculations. I'm not trying to say I'm smart, okay? I did these calculations in calculus. It's kind of a common thing, but it isn't easy to do all of that by hand. And so they were doing it on computers to check it. They were doing it by hand to check it. And everyone felt much more comfortable with a lady that was doing it, to say, yeah, I've double checked all the numbers. Because we look for things the computer doesn't look for. These guys are, well, this is, I don't tell this, I'm not going to tell this, but during the rest of the Apollo program, the astronauts basically took over because they were deciding who was going to go to the person on the moon. But because they are like cream of the crop of everything, they're some of the smartest guys in the room. You know, and the smartest guys in the room, they don't want to be in charge. They want to go design their little widget and do their part. The politicians, who aren't the smartest people in the room, I hate to say that, but it became to the point where the astronaut corps, and so in the control room, you heard Charlie Duke talking. He's an astronaut. He's going to be up there on 16, and he's the one controlling everything in the room. He's the only one allowed, except for one time when one of the engineers was such a bad situation, one of the engineers just jumped in real quick and said, I need to talk to him.
Did they have any way to control fly drive the lunar module, or was that all controlled by computers like at ground control?
So the question is, did they have any way to fly the module as it landed? I've played that game when I was a kid where you try and land. I never was any good at it. Most of the time I crashed. So what happened was the computer flew it for the first 2 phases and got it down, slowed it down, got it over the moon. The last one was going to land it, and it actually told them where they were going to land. But the crew, the commander in this case, he could actually hover it and fly it like a helicopter. So he was getting ready to land on top of a big rock, And he's like, well, that's not gonna work. So he actually hovered it longer, and that's where Bob was going nuts making his calculations. You don't have fuel to do this, quit flying around. And Buzz has got, if you ever taught a kid to drive, he's pushing his foot in the ground. They're standing up, by the way. So, and they're under 1/6 G. So I'm sure his foot was going into the ground saying, stop, stop, stop. We're gonna get this back to, well, I'm just gonna come back over here. Y'all, sorry I'm running around, but what do you got for me? Oh yeah, this is my mother here, by the way. It's not, but she adopted one or the other. You can only see from the ground half of the time where you're at. So Kennedy Space Center in America has the dish looking about half the time. So they got to go to the other side of the planet if you want to talk to them. So during landing, they were getting audio and video and everything pumped back from Australia at Parkes out of their big dish, coming back to the United States so they could keep talking to them because, you know, we were in the nighttime. So when here. Okay, so the question is, what happened to all the rubbish they left? Well, there was no environmental program at the time on the moon, so the idea was to live and get everything off you can to make sure you had enough weight, but it is kind of piled up, and if you look at some of the sites, even worse later, they actually blow things up on the moon so they can get seismic testing. So we didn't really have a good environmental programs on the moon. Let me get this one back here, and that's going to be it for today. I'll take one more after this, just so you give you a little break, because we're right on the line here for time. Yes, F1 engines gimbaled, which was still, again, one of those things that were like, now some of the way they work it is like they don't all gimbal, but in this case, they all, and like on Space Shuttle, they test them before they launch. All right, one more, and that's going to be it. Uh-oh, I'm going to have to get a picture. So they have something called a video that Apollo 8 took called Earth Rising, and so as they're coming around, they had their camera pointed out the window, and they got a really nice video of the Earth coming up, and I'll try and show that, but it does show the curvature of the moon, which is what he's asking, and it shows the. Now, one of the interesting things is that because there's no atmosphere, you get perfect color. So you know when you take a picture, they take a big light and put it on you so they have all the light, but up in theirs, there's no light deterioration, so they get really blue and really crisp colors. That's all I have. Thank you for coming. I think I made it in time. So. Oh, if you have another question or something, I'm stuck on the ship, so. I have